We're focusing on strengthening collaboration on climate action towards green recovery, and we're truly honored and delighted to have with us none other than Angela Lusigi, Resident Representative, UNDP India. So let's have a huge round of applause, and please help me welcome our very first speaker for the summit, Angela Lusigi.
Much. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Namaste, as we say here in India. It's good to be part of this conversation, and thank you to the organizers for having me at the Global Sustainability Alliance event. And when I was asked to come and speak on strengthening collaboration in climate action towards green recovery, I asked myself, what could I possibly come and say to such a diverse group of thinkers, leaders, and innovators? So I asked my team, because I've only been here for 3 months. I've obviously been in the space for over 25 years. But coming to lead the team in UNDP in India, I really wanted to hear the stories from the ground about what precisely we were doing. And I wanted to come and tell you 3 stories that will help to show that connection between people, nature, and sustainability. So the first story that I have is from Bihar. And in Bihar, we'll meet a lady called Chanda Devi, and she's a farmer. And she lives in a region where 75% of the population depend on agriculture. And like many who are in this field, their livelihoods are being challenged by climate change, weather change, the unpredictability. But for Chanda, her understanding is very clear. For her, the climate crisis is that, when we expect the rains to fall, they don't. And when they do, they destroy what we have planted. And if we, by some, miracle, happen to be able to have a harvest, we lose some of our harvest because we don't have storage facilities. So in that instance, the government of Bihar partnered with UNDP and with funding from Japan to install 15 solar-powered storage facilities. And this helped to preserve and conserve, because we know across India, 5 to 13% of crops are lost because of lack of storage facilities. And because of this, they were able to save at least $25,000 worth of crops. And this helped somebody like Chanda save money for her children's education. So let's move to Ladakh. So in Ladakh, we'll meet a young man called Palzes Agmo. And Palzes is a local volunteer. And he is protecting the fragile ecosystem of the wetlands. And why do you think this is important? Well, because the wetlands are the home of the rare black-necked crane, which I understand is a state bird, which has significant cultural significance and spiritual significance in this region. And because of this significance, it appears in many Ladakh stories, folk stories, and even paintings. However, climate change and tourism and livestock grazing is affecting the survival of this species. So working through the Secure Himalaya initiative, local volunteers like this young man are now working to protect the wetlands and preserve the livelihoods, working with the communities as well to save the ecosystem. And why is this important? Because more than 50% of the world's GDP depends on nature. That's almost 44 trillion. And India is home to up to 10% of biodiversity. So when we look at it in the broader scale, what is happening at that level is helping not only to preserve the environment, but it's also helping to protect the economic livelihood. Now, the third story I will tell is from Mumbai. And in Mumbai, we will meet Ratnamala, who's a 52-year-old waste picker. For 40 years, she's been working in tough conditions, helping to keep our cities clean. We know that in India, we generate 65 million tons of waste annually, and there are 4 million waste pickers like Ratnamala in the informal sector who are helping to keep our cities clean. But they don't have access to social health insurance and social security benefits. So we are working in collaboration with the private sector in this instance to be able to help waste pickers such as Ratnamala have access to materials to protect, financial support, as well as land, so that they can be part of the future of a sustainable circular economy. Now, all these stories I'm telling is to paint a real picture that collaboration and partnership is essential. If we want to have a green recovery, then there has to be a strong collaboration. So going forward, when we think about climate action, we have to think in terms of going beyond what we're already doing. Let me give 3 examples. The first example of how we can go beyond our traditional partnerships is looking in the area of development finance institutions. So, we know that development finance institutions, development banks, they usually work with government. But we're saying if we're looking at collaboration, then we need to go beyond. How can we have development finance institutions working beyond the government and working with the private sector and communities? I'll give an example. In India, the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development has been working with startups and farmer organizations to come up with new financial solutions for farmers. And this is creating space where we're able to expand the reach of existing financial instruments and have a more inclusive investment space for farmers. And we think that this is important because if private development institutions are working with these banks, then we can open up the space of funding that's available for things like the cold storage I was talking about earlier. So really opening up that space through stronger collaboration. The second area that I'd like to leave you with is that the private sector needs to go beyond focusing only on high return investments to also looking at solutions that have high social returns. And immediately our thoughts go to CSR, which is significant. I mean, I understand that in India, CSR spending reached 3 billion in 2023, and that's huge, right? And what we're saying is that how can we increase the returns in the CSR space, because we're usually looking at social investments, we're looking at community investments. How can we integrate climate action as part of that investment space so that we can increase the long-term impact of those investments? But we're also saying, let's go further. Let's look beyond CSR projects and let's look at the entire portfolio of your investment. How can you integrate climate action in that space? So we are not looking only at CSR, we're also looking at how we can integrate these actions in your investment so that you're looking at high financial returns as well as high social returns across the portfolio. The third area that I'm looking at expanding and broadening partnerships is the government. Now, the government has a very, very specific role to play in creating an enabling environment for investment to happen. But we're suggesting that the government needs to become more entrepreneurial and willing to take risks in innovative solutions that could fail. And here's an example. They could play a very important role in bringing together diverse actors and de-risking investments in climate space. It can help to crowd in private finance in fragile ecosystems, like the ecosystems I spoke about in Ladakh. And here, they can help to mediate between human and wildlife conflict, which will be able to attract investment in ecotourism, for example. So we're saying, let's broaden that space. Let's become more willing to take risks and innovate, even willing to fail, because in the end, that's the way that we birth innovation. So, in closing, we know that India has a very important role to play when it comes to combating climate change, because it's a huge country and accounts for 7% of global CO2 emissions. And this is why strengthening collaboration in the ways that I have spoken about, expanding partnerships by development finance institutions, moving beyond CSR by private sector, and enhancing government role in de-risking investment is so important. It will really make a big change in the world. And we think that India can lead the way for a greener, more resilient recovery that leaves no one behind. In closing, let's remember Chanda, let's remember Ratnamala, and let's remember Palze. Because their stories and the success of those interventions shows that climate action will depend on partnership, it will depend on empowering people, it will depend on empowering communities, and most of all, it will depend on transforming local economies. Whether it's helping farmers to adapt to climate change, whether it's financing waste pickers, or protecting endangered species. Together, we can ensure that climate action not only leads to a green recovery, but also creates a more just, inclusive future where both people and the planet can prosper. Thank you.